don't think we got a drop of rain over here at my house. It was pouring cats and dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Pouring in my
Cats and
house,
dogs.
too.
Over in Pelican Reserve, it was coming down, and there were puddles driving over.
Isn't Stephen Bloom coming?
Yeah,
The whole roads,
my mower is mowing in it.
About 2:15.
and it wasn't, hadn't started yet.
No.
Oh, it was just,
About
it was a deluge, absolute deluge.
2:20 it poured at our house.
Yeah, until I
2:20.
got over near here, it was coming down.
We got 5 months of rain in one afternoon.
Yeah,
Is,
yeah.
Danny
It was really
Wilson
poor.
coming?
Yeah, I know, it's weird.
3 p.m.
It's weird. It's so local.
I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if you have a phone, please turn it to silent. And we will start with the Pledge of the Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is indeed June 1st, beginning of hurricane season. And I will call the roll. We have our attorney represented by Lenore Brakefield.
Yes.
Said that correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Ed Tinkle is here. Supervisor Banks is here. He'll be in momentarily. Supervisor Feinberg, Supervisor Guy, Supervisor Flaherty, and our district manager, Chris Shoemaker, is here.
Got all the names right today.
I did. I'm back to normal. Chris, do we have speakers?
Yes, we have 2 today. And we'll start with Jim Brand,
And-
Hampton Park. He has a lengthy agenda.
Lengthy. Good afternoon, my name is James Brand. I go by Jim. I'm a resident in Hampton Park, 10154 Avalon Lake. First of all, thank you all for your time today. My first agenda item is the Griffin streetlight status. I know from reading the 2 documents from the May 18th meeting that you all had that you have a proposal for $82,900 from a vendor from Bentley Electric. And I know that Chris Shoemaker wrote a letter recommending approval of that bid and moving forward. I could not find in the minutes that the board had actually accepted and decided to move forward. So the purpose of my question is the bid awarded, and is it the intent to move forward with that project? If
My
anybody
intent
could-
was, yes, and I thought we did that and said to proceed with permitting.
Yes.
We did that last.
Okay,
last
great,
meeting.
wonderful. Good for you all. That's wonderful news that we're going to have streetlights, and they're going to be wonderful LED lights all along Griffin from Gateway Boulevard all the way to SR 82. So thank you all for doing that. I know it's hard work. It's, I believe, money well spent of your taxpayers. The next question is a topic that I brought up starting last April. I've met here 2 or 3 times and brought it up, and that has to do with the Griffin Drive. I call it a linear park fence. You all know what I'm talking about, right across the street. Kathy, you were going to find out if there was any status on that fence that you could share.
Okay, I know that we're getting some bids for fence. Okay, Chris, there was a little bit of a tie-up. But we're also waiting for the attorney to come back, find out if we pay for it, or WCI pays for it, or if we can split the cost.
It'd be wonderful you get WCI to pay for part of it anyway. Thank you for that, I appreciate it. The next thing I want to talk about is the lake repairs. Ed Tinkle and I are good friends. We were friends before he became a supervisor, and I have a tendency to call Ed up and ask him really ignorant questions, and he gives me really brilliant answers. Thank you for that, Ed. He shared with me that in April, and I think that, August of 2014, that the CDD received a letter from South Florida Water Management District that the lakes in in the Gateway CDD area were not in compliance, that they weren't being maintained like they should. And so I think that's what brought about the decision to do all this restoral work. I have concerns about public information about the lakes. On your website, you refer to the lakes by a 3-digit number, 103, 108, 110. If I go to, and Ed shared this with me, Tetra Tech has a spreadsheet, and they refer to the lake preserve designation as 1-T-FL2 all the way through. Lee County uses strap ID and folio IDs. Lee County, PA, is a tool that all the residents of Gateway are aware of. I have neighbors that want to go find out how much I paid for my house. Good for them. I go use the tool to find out about our lakes. And I went to Lee, PA, and I found out through Ed's help that I could go to the GIS portion of the Lee, PA website and click on a lake, and it would give me strap ID information and ownership and all kinds of information. But I said, I don't want to do that 50 times. So I called Lee, PA, and I said, have you got somebody who can run a database search? And they did, and they gave me a spreadsheet, 50 lakes, strap IDs, folio IDs, addresses of the lakes. My point of bringing all that up is I think that you all should think about having a reference to the strap ID or the folio ID so that a resident can then use that information to go find out where that lake is. Lake number 110 doesn't tell me anything. I can't find out anything about, at least based on my research on your website. I can't, and I asked Lee, PA, do they know what Lake 110 is in Gateway? And the answer was no. So I think you should consider that.
May I interject right there and bring up an issue, because this is complicated. It used to be simple years ago. All of the lakes were by the LTK1 XYZ designation. That is the designation under which they were permitted by South Florida Water Management District. Everything was fine as long as we used that encumbering system. Somebody got the bright idea, and the board at that time had Johnson Engineering renumber every pond. And if you go out there outside the door, right against the sofa, right above you is a translation. LK1 is pond 10 or whatever the number is. That is the only place I know it exists. The problem is that the reason we continue to keep that LK system is if you're dealing with South Florida Water Management District, you won't find anything on any of their documents that references pond 100, pond 200, that. It's LK whatever. And it is a nightmare, and they are simply not going to change their system. But I agree with you. Maybe what we do is on our website is somehow put that translation that's on the wall outside on a spreadsheet to let people know LK1 is pond number so-and-so. Now, the only other thing you could do would be to have then another line in Stony Brook, in Walden Lakes, in Gateway, something like that to help it. But you just mentioned something that you got something that, unless Tyler's got it, what you just described that you got, I've never seen that document where it's got all the strap numbers.
I forward you a copy of the spreadsheet, Ed. I know
Okay.
you get lots and
So
lots
that-
of emails
So
from me.
that, we gotta blend this, but you are right, and I'm thinking that for that June 8th meeting, we need to have a map, maybe 2 or 3 maps around that room that have all the pond numbers on it to where people can come up there and see beforehand what we're talking about. I don't think they have a clue of, well, I got people in my neighborhood didn't even know we were on 116. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
So I also got from Lee, PA, when they ran this spreadsheet for me, they gave me a diagram of all the lakes. And it's an aerial view as of January 2016. That's the latest data. And it shows when they prepared it. So I would be glad, Ed, I think I sent you
Okay.
this as well as a spreadsheet. I agree that what you just said, your residents in Gateway Commons, my residents, our residents in Hampton Park don't have a clue. When you say lake number 107, they have no idea what lake that is.
Mr. Frank, you're out of time.
Beg your pardon?
You're out of time.
I'm out of time. I know you can give me 30 more seconds. So the last part of my request is, based on discussion with Ed, the work that's being done right now is $235 per linear foot. You need to find an alternative solution, at least look at alternative solutions at a lower cost, because you're talking about taxpayer dollars. And then finally, for June the 8th, your residents, unfortunately, don't know what a CDE is. They don't know why we have storm lakes. If you go to nextdoor.com, you can find out that, oh, Jim Brand lives, his house backs to a lake, so he's the one that should pay for any lake repair because he has the pleasure of that lake. So your residents don't know why we have storm lakes. They have no idea why it's so costly. And then lastly, keep it simple. Most residents read at an 8th or 9th grade level. They don't read complex compound sentences, so you need to keep it simple. Thank you, Chris, for giving me some more time. Thank you all very much.
Does that mean our attorney can't talk? Does that mean our attorney can't talk?
We have two more speakers today. Scott Connell would like to address Worthington Park.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Good to be
Nice guy.
at the podium this afternoon. Good to see y'all. Again, my name is Scott Connell. I'm here representing, I'm on behalf of CES Engineering and representing the property owners of Worthington. Excuse me. This has been an ongoing discussion for years and years, and what I'm talking about is the area around the southeast corner of Gateway, where Worthington Commercial Park is, and Daniels Preserve in that area. And there was discussion towards a year ago, back in middle of September, several meetings about what do we do, how do we turn that over, being the lakes and the preserve areas, turn it over from the developer to the CDD with South Florida Water Management's approval. So after a lot of discussion and a lot of work with Tyler and others, Tyler, Tony, and I, and John Nagy, who is one of the principals with Worthington Holdings, we had a meeting September 2nd, 2016. And we went down the list of things that were paramount in Tony's mind, and I know he's not here, so. So we went back through that, and the big question was, how do we separate that, whatever it was, 400-something acres? How do we, some of it's built out commercial, some of it has the residential. There are several different lakes that were done by the various developers, being the residential and the commercial areas. So a lot of that, a lot of file searching, a lot of meetings with South Florida Water Management. The bottom line is this, is we came back and Tony had said, okay, if you get a letter from Water Management, South Florida Water Management, on how to break out this undeveloped parcel of Worthington Commerce Park, or also known as Daniels Road parcel, and show that the other areas are already approved and managed and accepted by South Florida, that's what we need. So CES engineers researched that and went back to Water Management back and forth back in February, March, and April this year. And we did receive a letter from them dated May 11th, 2017, that the bottom line is that this undeveloped area is standalone and that they are fine with, what's the term they used, separating it from the rest of the community, from the overall original permit. So, with that, this is the undeveloped track that Worthington still holds.
Do we
Worthington.
have a copy of that, Scott, because it's hard to see it from here?
Sure, yeah, it's just came right off the website, I did make it more, but. After that letter came out, that evening, I sent it out to Tetra Tech, Tony, Chris, and others, and said, okay, here it is, let's get it on the agenda. This is what we've been waiting for. And there was still some concern about the existing cattle fence that L. Harris had brought up last September. So I went out, actually, Elle went out on her own, we both happened to meet out on site, and Water Management had said, you know, this is where the fencing needs to go, in part of the permit, around the preserve areas. Well, that's during construction. This is undeveloped land, it's not under construction. Mr. Nagy had the cattle guy put down a fence, and Elle sent this out, and it still keeps the cows out of the patch, out of the wetland areas. It doesn't meet the criteria in the permit that's where the fencing is to go while it's under construction, because we're not under construction. So it serves the same purpose, and Elle wrote a memo, I think it sent it out to everybody, that said the fence is intact, the gates are closed, there are no cattle in the preserve areas. So I think we're over that hurdle.
So this fence is going around the conservation area?
Yes, keeping cattle out of the conservation area.
Okay, I understand that, but Timber Creek, and we're gonna talk about that after a bit, I understand just got their ERP. And we know that 26 CFS from their deal is coming across the FPL easement into this very conservation easement. What is that fence going to do to impede that flow?
It's just barbed wire cattle fence.
So it's
Nothing.
Big, oh,
Oh, yeah, you can crawl through it, you know, you.
okay, you're
Yeah.
just talking about strings of
This is
barbed wire.
string, yeah, it's
Oh,
cattle
okay,
fence,
okay,
that's all it
okay,
is.
okay,
Yeah, no,
okay,
no,
thanks.
that's all. It's a minor, every 10 feet you have a post and you have 3 runs of barbed wire.
I'm thinking fence like chain link.
Oh, no, 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 no,
I
no.
was like, no.
So, there was the concern over the fencing, and Matt Brocious with South Florida had issues, and Elle, and so I think we can put that to bed. I think it's been satisfied. We have satisfied the concern now that we can separate this parcel, undeveloped land, from the rest of the 3 main areas within Worthington Commerce Park, as it's known at large. And I had sent numerous emails and calls into Tony. Unfortunately, he was unable to respond. I also contacted Chris. And you know, it's unlike Tony, because he's always been very responsive. So, you know, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or anything else, so please let him know that.
I'll report back.
Tell him I'll slam him next time. But, you know, we need to, my client would like to get this resolved. I know that there's the forms, there's the bill of sale, there's an affidavit of ownership and all that. And then ultimately, what we want is the board's signature on the request to transfer the environmental resource permit to the perpetual operating entity, which is from the developer to Gateway Services District.
For the original non-developed, or for the original developed property, i.e. Daniels Preserve?
Yes, all but the undeveloped.
There's lies in a problem.
But we've, you know, Tyler has addressed a lot of those old issues, and we talked about it during the meeting. They were talking about aeration, there were some things, this, that, and the other thing, and I thought all that had been reviewed, and it's been 10 years ago that those issues came up with Lee County. People were living there, people were operating there. I don't think it is the original developer's responsibility at this time, because those properties have been sold and developed by others. Worthington does not control that. So, what I propose is that we get a general nod and an understanding that when Tony's satisfied with all the paperwork, and that the chairman has the power to go ahead and sign on behalf of the district for the transfer, once Tony's satisfied.
Understand that.
So that's my request.
When Tony's satisfied isn't necessarily when I'm gonna be
Okay.
satisfied.
Well,
We got a mess out there. it goes back 10 years ago, and Tyler educated me, I guess, yesterday or this morning, we've been so busy, about the background on this, and that certainly helped. That whole Daniels Preserve is a fiasco. I have never seen such a mess in my life, and this board, got us into it by 6, 7 years ago, accepting because some developer went belly up. We started doing the maintenance on that, and we now have a mess, and we're gonna hear about it June 8th, of people saying, why do you continue to accept stuff, let people off the hook, and then we have to go in, because Daniels Preserves ponds, one's gotta be fixed. And then they wanna know why we're paying for it. I don't know that, after talking to Tyler, that we have much of a legal way out of this mess now, but I think we have to be truthful with everybody and tell them what happened. We screwed up here at this board by ever accepting that thing for maintenance years ago. We should have told the developer, it's your problem.
And that
Clean it
developer
up.
at the time was Mercedes Homes, and Worthington sold them that tract of land, and they developed it, dug the lakes.
But
and
let's
we're
make
responsible.
sure so that we, while you're here representing them, that understand this. This has nothing to do with the tract that is now dedicated or going to be changed over to 500 EAUs, apartments, condos. That's the
The undeveloped
piece.
portion, the undeveloped
Has nothing to
tract.
do with that.
That's
You're
correct.
just asking for what has never been done yet, and that is us recognizing officially and telling South Florida Water Management District, we accept that we have the as-built, we accept the operation and maintenance, da-da-da-da-da, and it's officially ours.
Right.
I think the question we need then to make sure of, and I don't know that Tony checks this type of stuff, but by God, I'm gonna check from here on. Do we have as-bills, have plans, the structure's been checked, all of that
South Florida
stuff.
has all the certification on all the developed parcels.
But Scott, my problem is, they had it on another little development that's inside here, and it was falsified. I don't believe anything anymore.
Well, okay,
What I wanna
again,
know is verified.
I understand.
And we might just have to go out and spend some money and do some checking. But I don't wanna go out there and find, and I'm sure it may not happen, but I didn't think it happened to Stony Brook, and go out there and find a 36-inch pipe full of riprap. We
Okay,
just keep
but
paying
bear-
for the
bear in
mistakes of the
mind-
And
developers.
gentlemen, I don't mean to
Well,
interrupt both of
but-
you,
Well,
but.
yeah, I understand that, but this is gonna be an issue we're gonna be
okay,
asked to
but
approve.
bear
We've
in
gotta
mind
have a
that
way to
has
figure
nothing
this
to
out.
do with Worthington Holdings, who is trying to clean up part of this mess and owns the unoccupied, undeveloped land at this time.
Yeah, I have no problem
Okay.
at this point in time with the transfer and separation. I don't have an issue with that, but I'm certainly concerned about accepting for permitting what we did 8 years ago that's got us into this mess.
Thank
Or
you.
if we do accept it, we know and have knowledge of to what extent we're financially liable to fix it. Because I know what'll happen. We'll accept it, and South Florida will issue us a non-compliance letter. I've seen that boomerang go out, and in Gateway, that ugly thing always returns. We don't need to get hit again.
And Scott, we will address that when we get all the information in front of us. Because you're waiting on Tony.
it is a time-sensitive matter, there's a contract on that land,
Okay,
This is on the undeveloped part.
on the undeveloped part. So they need an answer at the next meeting,
And we're,
please.
Okay, we'll put it on
Scott,
the
we're
agenda.
doing some calculations for Lee County. That is, as we understand it, dedicated or right now planned for a 500 EAU complex.
It's approximately that. I don't know the exact.
But it's not commercial.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
and you said we had one more speaker?
One more speaker, recently back from the Southern Hemisphere, Flavia. Walsh.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be back. My third day. Just trying to catch up. Right before I left for my trip last month, I followed up with April in regards to a start date for the pond repairs, and I was really kind of caught off guard. So April 16th, I got an email from her before I got it from Chris, and it says, Flavia, the item was approved with two contingencies. One was insurance and engineering plans, and we're having some problems securing insurance information. Well, that was a surprise to me because the two contingency was a 1-year warranty and an engineer okay from here. But within the same minute, I got a response from Chris that said that they were willing to do the 1-year warranty with an increase of $8,000 in the original quote. And I asked, well, what does that mean to us? This is April 16th. He says, give me a week or so to regroup, go back to the board, and let us know. Okay. The first time that I asked the board to look at that, it was approved and voted on with the 2 contingencies. I waited, and I don't know if you guys recall it, I didn't even put my name down that day to speak, and then Ed brought it up. And that day was approved with no contingencies. So I was kind of confused. 10 days later, 2 days before my trip, no rain, maybe half an hour, I got 9 new puppies, just like this.
You got what?
9 new washouts 10 days after that email. So what I'm trying to say is, if you remember correctly, the original quote, a year later, double in size, 10 days later, I got 10 new washouts. So I really, at this point, because I just got back, I wanted to know where do we stand on that repair. And what puzzles me the most is if there was a problem with insurance. I know that that's the same company that's working on Pelican Preserves. So at this point, I just wanted you guys to fill me in on what's going on.
I can give a quick update from the staff side, and what it was at that time is Copeland was getting ready to do some work at Pelican, and they could not produce vehicle insurance at that time or workers' comp insurance. They had 7 people listed on their payroll, and they said only 3 people were going to be there. As of last week, we do have all their insurance documents, and I ran into another issue, which is with the contracts they have stacked up at Pelican, and it's all pond repair work. They're pushing that $200,000 construction limit that you can award a contract to without competitive bidding. And so that turned into another issue. On the positive side, what I have coming up later in the agenda is we need to purchase some additional lake restoration material, Armor Max and the fabric.
Mhm.
And I, because of the pricing, added additional material to use that for the washout repair.
Thank you.
So the only thing I'm working on now is finding a contractor to do that isn't approaching that $200,000 limit. And we had some concerns because when you ask a contractor to give a year warranty and he says, well, we'll add another $8,500 to the price, means he expects to be out there and doing $8,500 worth of repairs during that first year. So what's going to happen during the second?
Mhm.
So I did, and I'm bringing it up, order additional material on top of what we need for the pond restoration.
So I guess that will open up my question, because we did have repairs at that pond a year or 2 ago, and I don't think they were done, they were horrible. So are we trying to cover the sun with, a little piece of paper? Because are the repairs that we're getting in now just good enough to hush Magnolia Lakes?
No, what we're planning on doing where the
Meaning-
erosion is actually use the same
Same-
fabric that we're doing the lake restoration in those high erosion areas and looking at littorals to fill in between there versus hardscaping the entire pond.
Yeah, well,
And it's quite an upgrade using that geofabric and using the Armor Max and rock in that area that it is. Just
So-
going in there with cocoa mat.
cocoa mat. Okay, so right now, then, just recap and make sure I get it. You're just in the process of getting another contractor to come and do the work, and you already have the,
Getting bids right now and the materials being delivered and hopefully more with the approval today.
okay. All right, I'll follow up. Anybody else, Ed?
Question for Chris. I understand the $195,000 limit, but I thought Pelican Preserve's work is being paid for by WCI, which would not,
It's
I
a
wouldn't
bond,
think,
it's bond fund, but regardless of who's paying for it, when you have a project and it says pond restoration and work on those ponds like that,
even if it's in Pelican Preserve and being paid for by the developer?
correct. You're still giving them $200,000 of work without a competitive bid.
But, okay, so then,
But they haven't pushed that, they're just getting close to it.
correct. But is that per pond? Because I know mine is nowhere near that. Total,
It's total.
total, okay, that's easy to add up.
And with Pelican and adding work like that, pond at a time, even though it's different ponds, it's still the same type
Yeah,
of construction.
that's a total, okay. Well, I will follow up with you guys later. Anything else? No? All right.
Staff level will bring something to the next board meeting.
All right.
We have the budget, thank you.
And that was everybody.
That's everybody.
We'll move to staff reports. District Engineer.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Tyler Wainwright, Tetra Tech District Engineer for this afternoon. The only thing I guess I had to talk to you about is updates on the Lake Bank project. I don't know if Chris was going to do that, if I'm going to steal his thunder or what.
Help yourself.
Anyway, so here's where they're at. So there was 5 in this phase. 116 is done. 126 is about 95% done. 87, we are down to adding rock and sod. So all the actual reconstruction of the banks is done. And 86, they are getting ready to move to next. So as far as overall project schedule goes, on track to finish on time, or actually a little early in a couple of cases. And going pretty well.
I only wrote down 4.
118 times.
Oh, I'm sorry, 118. 118, the rock is installed. The only thing they're missing is sod. So, percentage-wise, I'll give you 85%.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
Are the lakes being restored back to their original, as drawn and as developed by the original developer, or are you all doing something above and beyond that?
Well, what you just asked is actually a lot more complicated than it sounds. But so, as drawn and as built by the developers is 2 different things. But I guess the best answer I can give you is that we are returning their lakes to their original permitted conditions.
So the original lakes built by WCI had all that rock on it?
No, as far as slopes, I mean, they're returning to their original conditions. As far as what we are putting back down, Gateway is doing something above and beyond what WCI delivered, or any developer for that matter. It's not just WCI. What any developer delivered at the time of original construction.
Tyler, I'd footnote that, just to play it safe, as we all know. This is Walden Lakes' design. We are not returning it to that. It was not built to this, and it's impossible to return it to this. So when Tyler says that, I put an asterisk that from the control elevation down, we are returning it to the original design grades. We're having to supplement it with these other materials to avoid the erosion. It's that simple. But are we returning these to plans and specs? That's one thing that we gotta come out, make sure people understand. No, we're not, because it was never built to the original plans and specs.
So, Ed, if I could, excuse me, so in Hampton Park, where we're putting down this coconut stuff, the 6-inch staples, are we in 2 or 3 years from now going to be back in putting down white rock to make our lakes be in compliance?
We're in a different, my opinion, we're in a different situation in Hampton Park. It hasn't had Haynes stamped on it yet. In other words, we haven't accepted it. And unless and until, in my position, I'm not gonna approve anything until I'm satisfied that those plans and the work is done in accordance with the plans and specs, period. So as to avoid the need and necessity to put down stone anywhere in my lifetime at Hampton Park.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me do it. Thank you, Margaret.
Did you have anything else, Tyler?
No, ma'am. That's all I got.
Kathy?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
As we continue on, are you planning for rocks for these ponds? Or something else? Because I think the rocks are horrible. I don't see any birds coming back. So, because I've been watching, and they just don't look pleasant.
The direction that we were given from Gateway was to do the rock. If Gateway would like to direct us to do something else, we would be happy to do so. But the direction we were given was to keep littorals out of people's backyards.
Yeah, I'm just saying that those ponds, they really are not becoming.
There's probably 100 different things you could put back there, and I think there's always someone that's going to prefer something different. The best I can tell you is we're going with what our client has so far directed us to do. But if there's a different direction, we'll be happy to take that.
Because I don't see any of the wildlife coming back and sitting on those rocks. I've been observing them, and.
We live on it, and I see them all the time.
And I.
That's another Donald Trump non-fact statement.
But I don't.
Somebody's making it up. It's not true.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
District Council.
I do not have a report today.
All right. Business manager is, for those of you who don't know, April did turn in her resignation. She's no longer with the district, so I don't know if we have an actual report or not.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Where are we, Chris, you gonna bring it up on the budget? What we're doing on getting the budget in a position that, you're gonna talk about that? Okay. I won't jump ahead of you then.
District manager.
Now it's time to bring it up.
Quick. Just
You just have a
briefly.
little patience.
I have none.
The Pelican Pond aeration project, we ended up, we have to rebid that project. There were some technical difficulties with the original bid, but that will be going out again. It's a large-scale aeration project. The Stony Brook LED entry gate, working on that as an agenda item for budget approval for that item today. Tyler went over the Lake Bank restoration projects. It's moving along on schedule.
Hey, Chris, can you, as far as the bank, the lakes that we have targeted for phase 1A.
The next 8?
No, the ones we're doing now.
Yeah,
Where
well,
are we,
there were 13. We've done 5. There's 8 to go.
5 completed?
We will have within the next 3 weeks.
Where are we at, right? So within the next 3 weeks?
Oh, they just had it
You
complete?
missed-
Oh,
You
I'm
missed
sorry.
it.
I apologize.
And 3 of them are basically complete.
Okay.
Just some sodding and cleanup to do. Some drain boxes, the 86 and 87. The 86, all the materials down, and they're working on adding the stone now, and they're getting started right now. And on the last one, and by June 15th, it'll basically be complete.
Sorry. Day job,
Okay.
priorities.
We also have a Lake Bank public hearing is scheduled for Thursday, June 8th at the Gateway Trinity Lutheran Church, 11381 Gateway Boulevard. The meeting will begin at 5 o'clock, and we'll be doing a presentation on the project, on the budget impacts, resolutions, bond validation, and I think it'll be well attended.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm working on a visual for that meeting, a very easy to read explanation of kind of the pond, the assessment, and I'll send it to you so you can send it out so everyone gets.
Well, the church has overheads front and back. And the pond numbering system, I think, would be one that would be a map that shows the pond numbering system would be very valuable, so people know, and then we can have a pointer so that people ask question about this. We start talking about ponds, and it's gonna be just like we talked about a while ago. They're gonna go in a never land, not even know what we're talking about. But that would be one, and then the other one would be having that financial stuff that we talked about. But I think my question was on this, was that, have we got an agenda, a format? Because I think first and foremost, and I think Tony will say it, we've got to get out to the people. The purpose of this meeting is a bond validation, and it has to do with one thing and one thing only, primarily. And that is explaining to the public the reason we're going through this process, and that's simply to allow us to extend the bond term for greater than 5 years. We're going to get a lot more questions than just that, but I think Tony's going to tell us that's first and foremost that has to be discussed. But my question is, who's going to make the presentations? Because I think Jim or somebody, made it, the KISS deal earlier. If we get up there and start reciting what we sent out in that first letter, the boos and the catcalls will come out.
Well, and that's why I'm trying to, and I'll put, if no one objects, I can work with Chris on putting the actual, a PowerPoint deck together, something that's very easy to read in common terms. So when we're talking about something, when we have the lake, the maps up, it'll show not only lake, XYZ, it'll have the name of that lake, an arrow, and when we talk about the bond validation, and I was thinking in terms of, kind of that line of credit. When you have a line of credit, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will spend that money. Just a visual that is very palatable to the residents.
Well, another one is we've discussed the phasing. I've got the final numbers from L. We have the first 5, we have the next 8, phase 1. Then we have the next 17, phase 2. I think they need to know that.
Yeah.
When's your pond coming up? And then what's phase 3, which is the last? And somebody's gonna say, well, that adds 13, 17, 17, that's 47. You got 64 lakes. The difference is the ponds that are left are either in the FPL easement or in areas where we haven't yet decided to do them, or may not have a problem.
And
So I think we need to explain all that to the people.
And I would add one caveat to that. So even if we display the next phases, I think coming out of phase one, we should revisit that phase, the ponds in that phases, just in case.
We did.
So you've already
Elle's
gone through a
Elle's done
rephrase?
all that.
Okay, all right. So
Elle's
that,
done all
that
that.
reprioritization validation
Has
has
been
already
done.
happened. Okay.
Yeah, we've had
and
5 or
that's-
6 ponds move from phase 2 to phase 3 and vice versa.
Okay. then
Madam
perfect.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you can have all the maps in the world, and they're not gonna answer the question that's likely to be foremost in people's mind is, what are you up to? And in order to answer that question, you need some photographs of before and hopefully after, but at least before, to show those who are, as Jim said, not up to it, what exactly what we're doing. And photographs, in my judgment, are the only way to get that across.
Bill, we have drone pictures that absolutely are unbelievable of the 5 ponds done from start to almost finish.
Well, don't you
And
think
we
it
could
would be
pull.
nice to?
I think it's great. I think we could pull out any one pond or all 5 of them and have a beginning and have an end and show maybe a couple in between. They're unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think.
And we could take those pictures out and blow them up.
I think that's great, and also, we need to be very clear why we're doing this. You know, this is not an aesthetic project. I mean, this is infrastructure.
It's a
and-
compliance
and-
issue.
So, let's just be very, I think we add those components in with some visuals. I think you're absolutely right, Bill. People have to see, the before and after, with the picture. So, we can incorporate that in the PowerPoint, and then if you want to do a larger illustration for people to walk up to and see it close up, that would be nice.
Madam Chairman, one other thing, but be real nice to see the agenda as early as we
Yeah,
can.
that's why I was
so that
bringing that
we
up.
can get in our head what's likely to happen, what we should be
agree.
expected to be prepared for. And in that regard, is the Board of Supervisors individually or collectively going to be expected to take any official action at this public hearing?
They will to approve the resolution for the bond validation, but I don't know if we're gonna do it at the hearing that night or the following board.
I don't know.
We'll find out from Tony on that.
And we put together a preliminary agenda. Tony's already circulated it around, and with the presentation, we'll also hand out so people can pick up on the way in.
Hasn't circulated it to me.
Oh, we just drafted one out yesterday. We'll have the agenda to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
And Chris, you're gonna facilitate that meeting, correct?
Intro remarks and facilitate.
Okay.
And I think the handouts will help also.
Chris, if I could, when you make sure that the church is providing you a loudspeaker system.
We have sound system.
They do.
Sound system.
Yeah, they do.
They
It's a
do.
real good one.
And then secondly, in the Gateway Lifestyle newspaper, called a newspaper, it states that this public hearing was planned after the Board of Supervisors approved the special assessment because of an increase in the cost of the Lake Bank Restoration Project.
That's an error.
This special assessment would not exceed $130.
That lifestyle article was wrong.
I
It
know,
just,
but
it's
that's what
wrong.
People are reading that, so you might.
So what you're saying is we need, and we probably won't be able to hit in any type of publication, but we can put on our website, an actual, release, an official release from the district. And maybe we can even talk, Chris, about what other mechanisms do we have for communication? I know we've got our Facebook page, but is there some direct, other direct communication outlets that we can use? I would probably say that a good one would be draft up something, shoot them out to all the HOA presidents to disseminate out to their residents.
Well,
And
this is,
having a handout for that night that is accurate would be.
this is where we get into the semantics that we talk about this stuff in and out. The residents don't understand it. There is a big difference between a bond validation process and an assessment. They are two totally different
Then
things.
those should be defined in the agenda.
Bingo. Big time. I agree. Because we're approving a bond validation process to 20 million. We haven't said anything about extending the assessment yet to 20 million.
And approval for any expenditures post phase one. And that, I think that's critical too. We could expand SRF funding, whatever, that doesn't mean we have to spend it, and that it will be approved from this board.
I think you gotta watch how you say that with South Florida Water Management District. The only reason they aren't on us like a robin on a June bug is we are proceeding with being compliant. We come back and give them any idea that we're chalking our heels, they're gonna come after us with more letters. It's that clear, that simple. And we don't need any letters, and we sure don't need any fines.
Chris, you had one item that said, report from Lee County Elections regarding the number of registered voters within CDD. Do we need to vote on that?
No, that is just an informational item that you're required to report at a board meeting.
Helping your day along.
9,451 registered voters in Gateway.
I do have one for Chris. You want me to bring it up? Certificate of substantial completion, Fort Line. Do you want me to bring that up now?
No, let me finish. I got
Okay.
two other items
Okay.
that I just wanted to address briefly. And we have scheduled a board advance for the Gateway Golf and Country Club on June 30th, Friday. We'll have Mr. Joe DeServo facilitating that workshop. And basically trying to board functions, board priorities, and reflecting some of that in the budget. And as far as budget workshops go, at the next meeting on the 15th, we're looking to try to approve the tentative budget. We'll be putting that on the agenda, and I would like to either schedule a meeting between then or the 15th can be an hour early, just to go over any discussion on the budget and any fine tuning. And that's the tentative budget, because after that, we'll have meeting discussions and workshops, first part of July, enterprise fund, middle of July, and the very first part of August, the capital projects review and the adoption set for August 17th.
Go ahead.
Would it be too much to ask to have you send the budgets to us before the next meeting?
Oh, no, not at all. That's why I'd like to get those. I mean, we'll have them for you.
Well, I'd like to have it in on paper for a change. We haven't had anybody running around our houses and delivering paper for a couple of years. But budget is so important that I, for one, need to spend several hours with it before I'm gonna feel competent to think it through or talk about it. Others may be able to look at it and grasp it in 10 minutes, but I'm sorry, I can't.
I'm with Bill on that one.
We're
Me
doing a
too.
little differently,
Me too.
and we would've had something preliminary today, but we're spending much more time on putting line items instead of broad categories that might say repair and maintenance $50,000. We're going in line by line and
Thank
listing
you.
what's gonna get done and the estimated cost for those. So that way, if the board can look at it, if they decide to cut, instead of say, take 10,000 out of this item, it'll be like, remove these individual items.
That sounds good.
Okay, well, we will get that to you as soon as possible. I know Stephen's looking for it on Monday, and he's gonna start putting that end of it together, so we can get it out prior to, or at least with the board packet, a full week before the next meeting.
The only thing I had on that is the 15th, I cannot be here any earlier than 3 o'clock.
Say it again?
The 15th, I cannot be here any earlier than 3 o'clock. I've got a conflict, I got a meeting from 1 to 3.
Well, right now, the agenda, it looks pretty light. I was just trying to do that so the meeting wouldn't go, but I think we can go over that in an hour, especially with all the information we presented to you in a timely fashion up front.
Okay, that sounds good, Chris.
And we may also bring up some of that during the board advance on the 30th as kind of a follow-up, to set aside 1 hour. I know Mr. DeServo has it scheduled for 9 to 5, but I told him that might be stretching the day. But we'll up through lunch with the board priorities in the advance, and after lunch, finish up and then spend an hour on the budget.
Because 2 of us are new, you're old hand now, I guess. Can we make a very simple timeline of the dates, things we have to do to get this thing enacted? Like, step one is a preliminary draft, and then take us through dates. So what's the end date of this that we have to have it approved? October 1, September 30th?
8/17 is what we're shooting for, so.
8/17.
Yes, sir.
Has to
I have
go
that
to the
list right
county
here.
in
Okay.
August, yeah.
So it's gonna be a fun summer.
Yeah.
Okay. Always is.
And that's all I have.
And just to add to that, the number of registered voters in Gateway Services CDD is 9,451.
Wow, evenly split between Democrats and Republicans.
Margaret, I have a
How about
couple.
independents? Okay, go ahead.
Chris,
Sir.
back to the issue, we've got to figure out, we've gotten the request from Fortiline, and they want to get paid, and they want a certificate of substantial completion. And I've sent emails out, and unfortunately, I can't send it to the other board members, and I'm hoping there's some way that we can get a trail to get it to them. But I am just vehemently opposed to issuing a certificate of substantial completion for work that's not working. We continue to have failures of these MIUs, and last week, the coup de grace was my MIU went out for the third time. My street had 4 of them go out. They continue to go out. These are on pieces of equipment that we've got a 20-year battery life, and they aren't making it 6 months. And they're failing one after another after another. We're also having issues of the amount of time it takes for a signal to reach here. We were told when this was sold to us, I believe the number was 45 minutes. We're getting 8 hours and greater. Something is wrong with the design of the system. The vendor wants to put that on us to go locate his design problems. And my deal is that this is ridiculous. We're going to be doing this in 2030. My point is, and my suggestion to Chris is, we call Fortiline and suggest he and Mark Green, Mark Green from, just looking at Mike, as I need to be looking at Kenny, sorry, from Zenner, be here and explain to us how on earth they expect us to issue a certificate of substantial completion on a product that doesn't work. And it's clear in our definition to be substantially complete, you have to show that this thing is working, and they're not demonstrating that it's 100% working, and that's the requirement. It's got to be working. Keep in mind that when you do a certificate, you start a clock, and it goes down 365 days, and on the 366th day, you buy it. So if those meters and or those MIUs are still failing, we can go the next 20, 30 years, and we're just going to continue to pay for MIUs. And my deal is that when we know they're not working, why would we ever issue a certificate? So my request is that we invite Zenner and Fortiline, especially Fortiline, they're the contractor. Invite them down here, and we just have a face-to-face to get this stuff resolved.
Do a walking audit.
Yeah, Bill?
Madam Chairman, I recall when we first heard the proposal for the meters, that it was described to us as a turnkey operation. And I've got the minutes of that meeting in writing that I can substantiate for you if it's ever needed. This project, if I may use that term, has been anything but this turnkey operation. And to even think about issuing a certificate of compliance or substantial compliance or paying any more money until this thing gets finished is beyond my understanding.
Would you like to comment on Portaline and Zenner?
I think Mr. Tinkle and Mr. Guy covered it, and they may have some issues whether the failures in number are within industry standards, but we continue to have failures of the equipment. Now we're sending it back to them, and they're replacing those under their warranty, but the warranty doesn't cover the labor and time that's spent, to outside of industry norms on the equipment.
If they had any kind of an explanation for the issues we're having?
No, and no, when Mr. Sanders was here from Center, he said, well, you're gonna have failures at a rate of about 3% of the equipment, which is normal, and we replace them under warranty, and our failures are exceeding that 3%. And that, I think Mr. Tinkle's idea is good to have him, invite them and come down and have a little face-to-face talk, because I think some of them on both sides, the subcontractor and the equipment supplier, aren't aware or not talking to each other.
Chris and I have maybe a little bit different opinion. We haven't talked about this at all. But my background in engineering and contract is when you issue a contract, unless and until you've achieved substantial completion, the specifications provide that it is labor and materials that is the responsibility of the vendor. When you go to substantial completion, sometimes the labor component falls out and they're responsible for materials. I'm of the opinion that they are still responsible for the labor and materials. In other words, these MIUs that we have to chase around installing, finding out what's wrong and installing them, in my opinion, that's their job. In my opinion, it was faulty installation to begin with. So I don't know why we continue to pay the labor, but I think our problem is Ford Align was a middleman in this project. He subbed out 100% of this work, one for the materials and one for the labor.
That doesn't make.
I understand, Bill. I agree with you. I agree with you. The problem is, what I was getting to, is I don't think he understands what the problems are. I don't think the contractor, our prime, understands what the problem. He delegated to us in late 2015, you don't need to talk to me, you can talk to ST and you can talk to Zenner. It's almost like, I don't want to hear about this, you talk to my two subs. And that is probably where we made our first mistake, is no, you're going to hear about it. And now I think he's wanting his $120,000 or whatever it is, dollars, and he doesn't have a clue what happened down here. And I agree with Bill. That's, I'll get my crying towel out, but it's not my problem.
So we need to set up a meeting.
I think so.
Yep.
We'll send them an invitation tomorrow.
Okay.
But, if you're gonna send him an invitation, you have to send him a detailed explanation of what our latest complaints are, so that he has time to address them in a professional way.
I think we can put that together.
We're compiling monthly
Yeah.
reports on those numbers and pieces of equipment, and they're very well aware because we're submitting them under warranty for replacement, but we have hard numbers.
They need to be in writing. I have a feeling, I probably shouldn't mention this, I have a feeling that we may end up in court on this thing before it's all over.
I think a face-to-face meeting, if I get the opportunity to talk with Rick Fordeline.
If you get the
I don't
opportunity
think
to talk.
I don't think it'll happen. I've been down this road before, and these contractors, they'll play this game with you until you chalk your heels. And I think it's time for us to chalk our heels.
I will arrange it.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you, Chris. Did you have
But-
anything else?
No, I've got one more.
Oh, go ahead.
Don't know if it's at this time, but we did not bring it up at the last meeting, but Pond 106, one of our original demo projects, failed, as we've talked about. We have a price to fix it. I'm getting phone calls from those residents. They are very unhappy. And if you go over there and look at it, it looks like an erosion project that eroded. It failed. It just didn't work the way we did it. It's one of the ones that we tried to do without putting the stone on. We were gonna put in the littorals. The littorals didn't get placed in. Long story short, we got a price, Chris, from Brad of about $28,000 to fix it. My request, I don't know if we need a motion to this, but we need to get out there and get that project done before the water levels come back up and make right what we tried to do right the first time as a demo, and it just didn't work.
Madam Chairman, I respect your opinions on all this, but don't you think we ought to have a report from our professional engineers that we're hiring to give us their view on this?
Yes, I agree with that. Tyler?
Hello. We wrote one about a month and a half ago, and Gateway staff has it, so we'd be happy to
I'm
share it
sorry,
with
it was
you.
what?
I said we wrote one about this issue, explaining the whole thing in our recommendation about a month and a half ago. And Gateway staff has it, and be happy to get you all a copy if you would like it.
Okay.
Yes, please.
And that's good, Todd. And based on his last financial review, actually, I think when Ed was bringing up the additional improvements to the lakes over at the country club, I think we have funding available for lake and pond maintenance. So this would fall in that bucket.
I think you indicated that transfers had to be made, but it was there.
No, okay. Just as a FYI.
So Tyler, in your recommendation, are you in agreement with this amount and that I'm assuming stone has to be brought in for that lake also?
Yes, ma'am. So what happened was there was the 3 lakes that were identical over there. One we were going to do with littorals, so we just put dirt on top of the TRM and we were going to do littorals. The other 2 we tried the rock on top of. Well, for whatever reason, the one that was going to get littorals never got them. So there was just dirt out there. So there's part where the dirt's washed away. I mean, there's nothing there on top of it. So in the memo that we wrote, we basically just said, look, you need to do something. I mean, either put down littorals or put down the rock. I think they're both probably comparable in cost.
How many linear feet are we talking about?
800 roughly.
Could we use that as a test pilot for the coconut matting and littorals that we were going to use? Is it viable?
Your issue is we're violating our pond standards by putting littorals on residential property.
Yeah, those lakes, so there was 4 sides of it.
We
The
were gonna do it on
one
one
side abutted the golf course. And I think the plan on the other lakes was that there's rock on 3 sides and we were gonna do plants on the golf course
On the
side.
golf course side,
To go
okay.
try it out.
Okay.
And then the one lake was gonna get plants all the way around. Well, plants never happened on any of them. So one way or the other, you should do something. I think the price that you've been given to do the rock is pretty reasonable. I think if you wanna do rock, I wouldn't have any hesitation about recommending
It
to do
would
it.
then match the other 3 ponds.
Okay.
Right.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can you explain to me why the plants never happened? You make it sound as though it just all vanished, and that's not usually the way things happen.
The short answer is no. I can't explain to you why the plants never happened. I think that Gateway got some quotes to put in plants, and I don't know if it's just that it never made it to the board or if there were decisions that were made not to put them in because of the pond standards, or I don't have a good answer for you why they never went in. Both your current and former district managers are here, so maybe they have more insight than I do on that matter, but I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
I wouldn't go any deeper than that on that one. So, don't ask the question, you don't want to hear the answer. That's all I had.
So, Bill, do you want to, the next steps would be to have Tyler or Chris send that proposal out to the board, and we'll put it on agenda item for the next meeting? Does that sound?
Well, if I were running the show, I would insist that current photos be taken of that lake and the results, together with an explanation of why it failed, together with, I want this all in writing. This verbal stuff off the cuff, off the top of your head at a meeting irritates me no end. Anyway, I
And he
think,
said he'd done a report
Yeah,
that
I
he'd
did not,
provide to us.
if I saw it, I have no recollection of it.
I don't think we have seen it, but he said he would get it to us.
Well, that's fine, but I think we need photos, we need an explanation as best it can be written up, so we don't make this mistake again. And then, together with a recommendation and a cost estimate, we've gotta start doing this stuff in a professional way.
I agree. Go ahead.
I would like to add to Mr. Guy's suggestion that there should be told who's the person responsible to oversee all this so that it won't happen again, so we'll know where the responsibility is.
Sit right there.
No, the person resigned.
So
If there was
you'll
responsible,
provide us
she
with the
did it.
report that you had created about why this particular lake failed and what you recommend as the fix.
Yes, ma'am, and I don't want to give you the impression that it failed. I mean, it's kind of overstating what happened. It never got finished. So the plan didn't fail necessarily, it just never happened. So yeah, we'll get that report to you guys so you guys can get the backstory and know where we are today and how we got there.
All right, we'll bring that to the next meeting, so we
We'll
have
bring
all
that
the information.
Also, 83.
Yes,
Jim
and
Brand.
83.
Thank you.
Was there I heard a voice there.
I bring my own pictures.
We'll bring pictures also, we'll run the drone over.
Yeah, utility manager.
There's no report for the utility manager.
All righty. That brings us to committee reports, P-PAC report. Did you have anything you wanted to?
Phil Measy, P-PAC. You have my written report, and you can certainly ask me questions. The one thing I would like to emphasize on this report is we would like to ask the board to give us some involvement in checking out these areas that are that WCI wants to convey to the board before they are conveyed, because we believe there are problems there. And it's not within Tetra Tech's purview to look at them, but there are certain kinds of problems on the roads and on the assets to be conveyed that aren't checked out. There's a lot of bad landscaping problems. There are problems with the monuments, and there are even problems with the roads that have occurred since they were checked. A lot of it to do with the traffic that the construction traffic that WCI Lenore is putting through there. And before we accept the conveyance of these assets to the CDD, we think they need to be checked out, because there are things we believe WCI Lenore should do, or we're going to end up incurring the expenses for doing them. And so we would like to ask the board to ensure that we don't approve the conveyance of these assets until some of these things get checked out.
Margaret,
And
just,
P-PAC was included in the loop on that.
No, we really weren't.
see, this gets back to that permit criteria manual issue. And I'm glad they wrote this up in your deal, because it's going to be the perfect lead-in to changes to the permit criteria manual. But the problem is that we got the cart ahead of the horse. I think my question is that, and I haven't read that thing and know it by heart, but an issue that comes up is we go out and do an inspection, and then nothing happens. It doesn't get transferred because of a punch list or whatever list of things that kept it from becoming real. And then in the interim, like construction traffic or whatever, tears something up. How do we got to stop this train. We got to give these guys, if we tell them, they come in, or let's start it the other way. They come in and ask for something, and we go out and check it and find out that it's got a punch list. We've got to be able to tell them, you guys got 30 days, 45 days, and at the end of that period, you don't have it done, you start all over, and we're not going to accept it. Otherwise, we end up in this deal that what I think Phil is saying, if I'm not wrong, is that we did an inspection on these roads, and at the time, they may have been approvable, but since the time has gone by, construction equipment has torn some of them up. So,
It goes further.
How do you do this?
It goes further than that, Ed. You're absolutely right about that. But the issue goes further than that, because there are certain things that
We don't even check.
That we don't even check.
I understand
And
that.
we were not involved. There was no provision to have them checked.
And I don't
Now-
know that our
now-
project manual even discusses them.
That's right.
That's the problem.
And on Cypress Grove Drive, for example, we have checked things out. Tony has some of the information of things that we have asked for. I've sent him numerous memos about some of the issues that we have on Cypress, but that's just Cypress Grove Drive. Now we're talking about a lot of other areas in Cypress Grove. We really haven't even had the opportunity to go out and inspect them and look at them and come up with things that need to be done. We're going to end up with a lot of expense that we shouldn't have to incur.
We've got some loopholes in our manual of what you just described.
Yeah.
But I cannot believe that if I don't go back and read the King's English, that I can't find something in there that says the project is inclusive of all components, whether identified by name or not, i.e. sidewalks, landscaping, statutes, memorials, street signs, which aren't big-ticket items on our list of things when you consider the dollar value of utilities, for example, in roads. But nonetheless, there's things that's going to have to be paid for by somebody to fix. So I think first I want to look and maybe even get a legal opinion from Tony is that even though it's not listed as one of the items that have to be checked off, I'm not so sure that I'm ready to allow any developer to go find that as a loophole and say, ollie, ollie, all in free. Let's get a legal opinion on how we stop that, and if we have to, we have a special meeting as quick as we can, and we change the deal to incorporate it. But you can't have those kind of things happening.
Yeah.
These guys know dang on good and well that a project is all components. So don't come in here thinking that you're gonna get away with doing 90% of them and let 10%
Yeah.
fly under the radar.
Yeah, we have pictures of some of the landscaping. We got dead plants out there that we're gonna have to replace if they don't
So we
replace
got-
them before
we got
we
an
accept
issue.
this stuff. And there's $25,000 worth of landscaping on just pieces that we checked out, and it's not the entire amount. So.
But the
and
timing is the real thing.
Yeah.
If they go in and do have a request, and our engineer and our district manager and whoever else goes out, checks and identify these things, and we develop a punch list, we've got to put a clock on them. The guys, this is good until these things are done, all of them are done, and then we'll approve it. Otherwise, what you're wanting to do is just to borrow time and essentially get an extended warranty on us.
Right.
And we can't do that anymore.
Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
Phil, you mentioned a second ago that you have $25,000
Yes, that
worth
we-
of plantings that are dying.
That we've
da-da-da-da. Did I get
identified.
about
Yes,
right?
yes.
In what neighborhood is that, please?
Well, it's on Cypress Grove Drive, and Bill, I can't tell you exactly where, but some of it goes into Matarita. Some of it, a little bit of it may have been in Solero, which you already accepted at the last meeting. I think that's not a major thing. But it's in a number of the communities out there in Cypress Grove.
Have pictures of this deficiency been taken and sent to WCI Lennar?
Not sent to WCI Lennar
Have they
that I
been
know
sent
of.
to our district manager?
They've been sent to Tony, but we can certainly send them to Chris.
Bill, you're going to something. I think that's the way to go. If we can get P-PAC,
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be breaking some rule here, but if we can get to P-PAC, and you guys identify these things that have not been identified by the engineer or
Yeah.
doesn't normally fall into our engineering deal.
Right.
I think the deal is that, I don't think it goes to anybody except to Chris.
Yeah.
Now, copy everybody and his brother, but it's got to land with
Okay.
him. I don't want it having down at Tony's desk, and pardon Tony, and he's in San Francisco, but I don't want it sitting there for 14 days.
Okay.
That's got to be acted on fast. But
That
surely,
clock you're talking about works both ways.
that's exactly right. It's got to be fair both ways. We get that in. I don't know why, going along with where I think you're going, that we go back and simply give WCI Lennar, independent of anything else we've got on the trail toward takeover, guys, you got these issues that have to be addressed, and the timeline on this is the acceptance of this other stuff. You don't do this, you don't get this approved. And be done with this. But if you've got the knowledge of it, because it sounds like we
We've
haven't
got
gone out and
we've
done
got
what you.
some of it. We've got some of it, but not all of it, because we haven't
Well, we
been out
need to
there.
work then maybe P-PAC and Chris, or what is it? Is it a Public Works issue that would be Mike, or what kind of stuff is it? Is it Public Works items?
Well, it's monuments, it's
It's all
landscaping.
kind of Public Works thing.
Yeah.
It's not utility.
It's not utilities.
Okay.
The utilities have been checked out by Tetra Tech and.
Well, I've been with Mike the last couple of days. He knows
Yep.
what the hell he's doing. Maybe we get Mike, you, and some of the P-PAC reps go out, really put together a punch list, come back to Chris, give it to him, and then we formulate a letter to WCI/Lennar and say, guys, this is part of the deal, period. This is crazy to
Yeah.
kick this down the road.
Well,
This just
it
can't-
it
it's
includes
crazy.
other things. There's even a lighting issue on,
That's still Public Works.
yeah.
Yep.
on. So we would like
I think
to
that's
be able
the
to
way
do that
it.
before you accept this stuff.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Any other? That's all
Sounds
I had, unless you have other questions about the report.
Anybody have any other questions?
No, thanks, Phil.
Thank you. All right, I got a consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they need to pull out of the consent agenda?
I
for
do.
Approval,
Just,
for change?
I have several.
Okay.
On the minutes of,
you're just pulling it, Bill. Which one?
I have it on pages and line number.
A, B, C, D, or is it all of them?
Say again?
Is it
could
all?
be- It could be on all of them. I've got the page numbers.
I just had a general question, is what happened to our audio system that we weren't able to do the minutes? Was that just a surprise?
I don't know, but some, on these minutes, some of them indicate that I made a motion, and I did not, because I was generally opposed to
Well,
what
they
was
called me
going
and asked,
on,
and I said I
think it
thought Bill
happened-
did it.
I think it was you, and whoever listened can't tell your voice from mine, and but I'll give you the ones,
He called me.
I'll give you the ones that I object to, and then you can, Madam Chairman, decide what you want to do about them on
Hawkeye.
on page 22, line 67.
Yeah, can we go to these, because I have a feeling I'm gonna get involved.
Huh?
Can you scroll these, Chris?
I did not vote to accept the engineering report and master assessment. Blah, 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 blah.
I'm sure I did that.
Yeah, that was,
On page 23, line 86.
I know I did that.
I did not make,
I made that motion.
yes, thank you, I did not do that one. And on line 109,
Same thing. I did all those motions.
okay.
Guilty.
and on page 24, line 160,
But I do believe, Bill, you seconded them all.
I cannot believe that I seconded that.
Which
I would-
one?
I would.
Which one, Bill?
Well, it starts at line 126.
Okay, go back.
That's the resolution on the 20 million, which I was
There's
opposed
nothing
to
on
going
one.
that far that fast. I would not have seconded that. That second came from somebody else, and I can't tell you who it was, but it was not I.
I don't see you as a second there.
On line 160.
On line 160.
160, okay.
Oh, we were on the wrong one. There isn't any 160. Oh, you go back the other way.
Page 24.
Oh.
There's no 16.
I have, yeah, right here, providing an effective date, and Mr. Guy second the motion. The last,
As you recall, I was opposed to that at the time. While I voted in favor of it, I did not second that motion.
We don't have a tape that we can check on this stuff? Because I agree with you, Bill. I made the motions.
Is there a tape on this?
Yes, there is. It's
Somebody
all
needs to
recorded,
go
sir.
back and make sure.
Just check that.
So
Thank-
this
thank-
is all from one meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
So those minutes should be pulled and brought back, so with the corrections.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I got a full May 4th meeting,
Okay.
and we can go to page 29.
Of May 4th?
Page 29, May 4th. Line 86, I believe, where it says a 4-0 vote. It was actually a 3-1 vote. And I did ask Diane to listen to the tape. So that and I am correct, it was a 3-1 vote.
I agree. I
What
agree.
line, please?
I remember that.
The last one where
86 on
it says
page
86,
29.
40.
Page 29?
Yes,
Line-
sir.
That's
Line
correct.
80, oh, line 86.
So that needs to be corrected. And I did, like I said, I
That
did
is,
ask. Yeah.
you are correct.
I agree with that.
I remember that. I remember that one.
But I asked Diane to listen, just to verify.
Okay, on the copy that I have, it is 3-1.
Yes, they said she had contacted, Seven Trent to correct it.
It didn't get changed in here,
Meeting
but
vote.
it is 3-1 on the one that she gave me to sign. But we're pulling
So that raises a question. So we're not writing these, we're sending the tape to somebody else to do it?
ST.
Why?
It's in their original contract for a while. Diane was doing it here, but that was a task that they were paid for in the contract, so we pushed it back to them.
Paid for but not earned.
Get what you pay for.
Me.
You get what you pay for. Or maybe not.
Translate it.
So the minutes
Should be doing
of
it
the
here.
reconvene are the ones that we're pulling, with the motions that say Mr. Guy, but actually were Mr. Tinkle. Is that correct?
Was that May 5th?
And,
Was that the May 5th or the April? April what, 20th?
and if Silver Trent
27th.
is creating the minutes based on the tapes, you may have to call out
The name.
by name, second by,
Francesca, yeah.
you know, we just may have to be a little more descriptive.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know,
If we're
because
gonna do it
Diane
this
knows-
way.
Knows everyone's voice.
Yeah.
We may have to tighten up.
Okay, so we'll pull the April 27th continued. Those were the ones that need correction. So do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items A, C, and D?
What's
So
the
moved.
correction?
With corrections.
Well, that.
That 3-to-1 deal is what Kathy's talking about.
Yeah, and like I said, in the minutes I have, it's been corrected. So that was already taken care of.
So moved.
So, who made the motion? I'm sorry.
I did, Guy. This one? Yes.
And who seconded it?
Doug,
I'll second.
Because
Mr.
I thought you
Mr.
made the
T.
motion.
he did.
It's all right.
Bill didn't hear it.
Okay,
I'll take
All
the
right.
second chair on that.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Administrative agenda, action items. Approve revised fee structure and proposed fee structure for future adoption.
It's pretty fun.
We'll address that. That was the item that they were working on to update the fee structure for the recreational facilities, especially the soccer.
Can you
park.
scroll that up, Chris?
Lights charges. The charges for lights, and there is a new schedule that's put together. And it's basically for your consideration, and we would bring it back to the board for approval. And all the changes are shown. They're making changes to the charges for the RV storage, making changes to the charges to the soccer complex, and adding fees for the lights. Mr. Tinkle, you may see there's really not a capital component.
I saw that and I was gonna bring that up. We need to do that. There needs to be
What are you
a,
guys talking about?
we received a report from Bentley Electric on the lights at the soccer field of things that need to be done, and it basically boils down to a $30,000 a year add-on to the soccer for capital to redo the lights at the end of their service life, which is basically, I think what did he say, 4 years, 5 years, and 7 years. And it equates to about $30,000 a year.
I thought you told us that we didn't have to spend any money on those lights.
No.
That when you took
We
the
don't have to.
79,000 that was in
We
the
do not
budget,
have to,
used it
we don't have to replace them with the stadium lights. The lights we've got will work great, but we're trying to create a capital reserve budget to replace them when they do it the next time, and not be just helter-skelter
What's
going
the-
out and borrowing money.
What's the life expectancy of those lights?
He said the first 3 had about 4 years, 4 to 5 years, and then we have some other ones that might make it 7 years. So the combined was about 15 and 15, which is $30,000. And so when Chris and I talked to him,
30,000 total replacement?
yes,
So we wanna amortize 30,000 over,
we need 30,000 per year to be able to generate the money to do the fixes. That was the estimate that they came up with.
Wait,
Oh, we're gonna put, is that going into the 18 budget starting off?
My deal is the first time that we have an opportunity to raise that, whoever's paying for that $30,000 has got to come into play.
okay.
Somebody's got to pick up the tab
So
for
it's
it.
$30,000 over how many years?
Basically 7 years.
4,000.
30,000, no, not 30,000 over 7 years, it's 30,000 per year.
So we need
Per year.
210,000 in 7 years to replace the lights.
It's in two components.
in two-
30,000 for 4 years, I think he said 4 to 5, and the other one was 7.
So you're suggesting that a capital component needs to be added to the fees that we're charging for
Yes, I do.
field usage?
That's what generates the cost, that's what should pay for the cost.
And then,
I object to that.
Yeah, I don't
let me
know.
ask you,
I think I
can I ask
agree.
another question, Madam Chairman?
Go ahead.
So once we, and this will be complete restoration, right? That's not a maintenance cost, that is,
I believe it's a maintenance cost. It's a maintenance very similar to what you just spent, which what, Chris, we spent 87,000 plus. Tyler, do you remember what the two numbers were that we gave a work order to Bentley? I want to say around 120,000 bucks.
It was like all in a little over 100. It was 80 something and 30 something.
Yeah, and it was just for 3 of the fields, wasn't all of them.
so what I'm trying to understand is, those lights have been up and in existence for 20 years,
I don't know how long.
and we've done minimal maintenance on them. So we've gone 20 years with, except for changing bulbs, no major structural improvement. So we've done an improvement now, some maintenance, which is 80K. You're saying in 7 years we'll have to do another 120.
That
How
was
long
the,
will
that was the estimate.
How long will that get us? Are we saying every 7 years?
Yeah, we'll
we
probably
gotta-
have to do it again, yeah. I
How
think,
could-
what we can do is we can get with Bentley and get a clarification on this. My whole point is that Bentley's deal to us is you need to be setting aside $30,000 to keep these lights functioning.
And the reason why I'm asking this is if, let's say it's 150,000 in total maintenance over the next 20 years, then that's the difference of saying amortizing it over 20 years or
Yeah,
or
we
7.
didn't ask it that way. We asked him what it would take to do these, and the number he came up with was 30,000.
Mike Tisch for the record. I was out there actually talking to Bentley when went out there yesterday and was talking to them with the lights they were pulling down. They said they were about 10 years old. The ones that
The lights are 10 years
The
old?
ones they're pulling down now are 10 years old.
Madam Chairman,
Go right ahead.
a year or so ago, the board voted very definitely that we were going to continue the soccer program. And anything that diminishes or extinguishes that soccer program, I'm in opposition to. I think there's deciding how to finance the lights or the field renovation or whatever the heck it is something that we ought to talk about when we're working on our budget, capital or operation, and not part of a usage charge.
See, Bill, I'm just the opposite. I wasn't here a year ago, and I totally disagree with the decision of that board.
And
That's your right, and you didn't vote on it then, but you can now, but that's,
My deal is they use the facility, let them pay for the facility.
And I understand your thinking on that, but there's a value to the entire community for those fields to be there, for our park system that we're trying to,
Margaret, the people I talk to don't see that with you, what you're saying.
and I hear the opposite,
So
you
he-
know?
Yeah.
Honestly.
But I have no
it's a-
problem with doing a discussion of it.
Here's what I would probably propose, and I wish we had this today, and maybe we have some pieces of it, components, is especially like the soccer field, because that's tied to leagues and the type of use is different than our other the pool and the fun park. I would like to really have a breakdown of what it costs to maintain, service, and to operate that facility. Everything from lawn, just mows, sod, equipment, lights, either maintenance, for the, structural, changes either today and tomorrow. I mean, we need a
I'd ask that-
10-year plan. And then once we look at what the total operating costs for that facility, we need to make a decision, how much of that do we want taxpayers to cover? How much of that we want to offset by revenue? And then we can determine kind of what's palatable for the board. I mean,
And I think that had been created. I know it's been a long time since I've seen it. but
April
that
did it
has
for me
been.
about, just when I came on the board, and as I recall, the number was, but we need to, I agree with you, we need to have that discussion. As I recall the number, it was $240,000 a year for the soccer complex.
yeah, but my point is, I don't know if that was all-inclusive of
No.
what
No
additional
capital,
maintenance,
no.
no capital.
But this was something that I would suggest that we have Mike work on getting with somebody like Bentley Electric, and we need that information to make that decision. Then let the chips fall as to where it's going to be paid from. But we need to know what the number is.
I mean, I think, having kids, mine don't play at Gateway anymore, but I would side with Bill, and I think, some of the others, where we don't want to offset a service that's being provided that has a benefit to the community. But we also need to look at improvement and maintenance and those types of things, and really determine if revenue is to go into capital improvements, and then it is what it is, and then general operating costs will be absorbed by taxes. But until we really know what that number is, we can't make a decision on how much should be absorbed by taxpayers and how much is going to be offset by revenue. And probably on top of that, we also need to look at revenue models. So the more money we can generate without negatively impacting the leagues is a good thing. I mean, that's running operational efficiency with the leagues. So,
Mrs. Flaherty?
I'd like to table this to the next meeting until we get further information to fill everybody's criteria.
I agree with that. This is a work in progress. I don't think we can vote on anything on this
That's the
today.
motion to table?
And the motion is to table.
I second that motion to table.
Okay. All in favor of tabling to the next meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
On the basis that we're going to be getting some
Additional
information.
information, yes. Okay. Lake Bank Restoration Project additional material.
I'll handle that item, I mentioned it earlier. As far as lake bank restoration and material, I have a request here for $70,000, and it really has changed in the last couple of weeks to right at $90,000 worth of material. The additional expenditure made by the board for the lake bank project was $317,065, and we need about $45,000 to $60,000 to finish this. And where that's come up is we've needed additional pins. We have design slopes that are not quite 4-to-1, a little more flat, have required more of the material. And also around corners and bends, the square lakes, there's more overlap to it. So that's really where it's coming from. And what I've also added into here was about out of that 90,000, 40,000 of additional material to buy for repairs to the other lakes. And that will come from those line item budgets, not the Lake Bank Restoration Fund, but the bid that we got on the project materials from Propex was 25% lower than the next bid. And the pricing is extremely competitive. They were just trying to get into the Southwest Florida market, and we just can't buy it cheaper anywhere. So while we have the opportunity and they were holding that price for 90 days, I wanted to buy some additional material for other lake repairs.
Will this come out of the SRF?
Nope, a portion of it will. What we actually use on the lakes, the rest of it will come out of the lake bank repair and maintenance.
What's the dollar amount? You changed it, but I didn't get it.
90,000, approximately $90,000.
Wait a minute. Approximately 90,000. Those are two different terms. Is it exactly 90,000?
$90,760.
Approximately.
Yeah, I could pull the purchase order that I have.
I'll make the
for-
motion to that expense to get the Propex.
And you will see transfer will do, because again, what we're gonna use on these lakes, and that'll all be wrapped up in the next 2 weeks. Will be billed to the lakes. The rest we'll use for repair and maintenance materials. So when we do the erosion, instead of using the cocoa mat, where it's not appropriate, we can use the higher strength material.
Mr. Tinkle made the motion to approve the purchase. Do I have a second?
I'll second, but I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Guy seconded. Go ahead. Question?
Chris, when this material is delivered, is it gonna be stored out here?
Yes, sir. Well, I'll
Now,
keep-
we were keeping those separate by contract or contractor or something. Is that still in your plan?
Well, what we'll do is, as we wrap the project up, we'll return the Connex, and we'll keep 1 or 2 of them to store that material as we're using it. We don't want to keep it out there long-term, not protected, but the material that we're keeping that we'll use for the next lake banks, and we plan on using that in the next 60 days. And we'll probably keep a couple rolls of it for spare for spots, but I think between 106 and 83, what I've ordered, we'll use up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And I also mentioned too that when Pelican did some repair work on Pond 27, I piggybacked purchase for their material. Of course, they paid for it, but we ran it with this contract also.
Any other discussion?
Chris, is there any opportunity at this price point to do any, can we get ahead of any future purchases to save money, or is this what we need right now based on what we know?
This is what we need right now, and the contractor's, holding the price not for much longer. And I would assume for the next phase of the bids, because it'll be several months down the road, and the engineering plans aren't done, and we don't know
So we don't
exactly
know
how
what-
much
okay.
material we're gonna need. And plus, I think people would ask us to rebid.
Right, okay, thank you.
I have one question. May I?
Yes, go ahead, Bobby.
Flavia Walsh, Magnolia Lakes. So the extra materials that you purchased, that you added to that order, was within the original quote given to you
Yes.
over 6 months ago, which nobody has revisited Magnolia Lakes since. I can assure you that you may need a lot more, because within 1 month, we have severe washouts that were not on the original plan.
No, we'll have to go out there and wheel it off and make
I'll
sure
be
we do
there.
have enough.
Okay.
Chris, on that one, we gotta kinda watch that, because 83 is on phase 2, and we haven't got approval, so any SRF opportunity can't happen unless and until we do the facility plan revision. So if we're going to be doing this, we're gonna be doing it non-SRF.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I think I can see a part of 83 being done to fix emergency deals, and then the rest of 83 being the big project.
Or the plan.
Per plan, yeah.
And it would be no different than the work Mr. Harley did at his house and had the stone, on his own, and came in, then we came in and did the rest of the lake, and, we'd just match it up.
That's argumentative, but we'll go on.
Yeah, don't get started.
Don't go into that one.
Any other questions for Chris on this? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Chris, you've got your materials.
Thank you. The next one is also, I mentioned this at the last meeting, that Stony Brook had approved $12,352 to Ramco Protective Services. At that time, I did not ask for board motion. We do have the formal quote. Work is basically underway, or been approved at that end, so I was just asking for board approval, and it has been approved by the Stony Brook HOA.
Do we typically do that?
And they had bids for the project.
Because of the amount, we're just wanting the board approval. But it was fully within our budget and needs to be done. We've got breakdowns of those gates continually. They need
Let
to
you
be replaced.
Stony Brook people make that one then.
So move.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Banks made the motion, Mrs. Flaherty seconded it, and I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any walk-on items, Mr. District
I
Manager?
do have a walk-on item, if I may. We've had in the budget $46,000 to purchase 2 additional vehicles due to the adding staff for the utility manager and public works manager. And we looked at state contract pricing for vehicles and also for local dealers, check pricing with them. And we have a recommendation, I'd like to move forward to purchase 2 fleet-style Toyota Tacoma trucks at approximately $22,000 apiece from AutoNation Toyota in Fort Myers. And the reasoning for the smaller trucks is low maintenance costs. They turn easy. They're fairly inexpensive to operate and maintain. We get some oil changes, and also we'll be using a local dealer. But we did get quotes from the state contract and from 2 Toyota dealers and took the best price.
And what was that amount?
22 each.
44
total? 44K?
Total amount is $42,806.26 for 2 vehicles. And that was budgeted at $46,000, so we're about $3,200 under the budgeted amount. And those vehicles come already with bed liners, heavy-duty mats, and the only thing we're going to do to them is put a wrap on the tailgates with the black and yellow stripe and the gateway emblems.
What does this bring us up to, the total number of vehicles?
Well, we have the 2 Ford trucks, we have the van.
And the Ford trucks are used by?
Everybody.
Okay.
As far as total vehicles, we basically have the crane truck that we try to keep off the road as much as possible for work. We have the van that's stocked with spare parts and is primarily a lift station type vehicle, and a few of the John Deere small ones. So basically, a van and 2 trucks.
Okay.
And do you, are you putting toolboxes in the back? Do you need any type of storage for tools in the beds, back beds?
Well, we may. We haven't looked into it in that much detail yet, but a lot of times the tools that we carry are a minimum amount of hand tools, basically a small toolbox.
Yeah, well, I mean, you still would be within budget if it's needed. I mean, it's probably not a bad idea to pack some basic tools in the back, or have some place where you can store things, so, just curious. So I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of, did you?
It's okay. I'll second it with, because
No,
I
you
have
go ahead.
discussion.
I'm not done. You want to go ahead if you have another question?
I do. I wanted to know if we have a copy of all the bids, so we can look them over ourselves
Sure.
too.
Yeah, I've got the state contract, and with and when we looked at them, they had the Nissan product, but not the Toyota product. And you could, we looked through all the bids, and then we went to 2 dealers, the Toyota dealer in Naples and the Toyota dealer in Fort Myers. And I have to say they were within $100 or so, and the Naples dealer offered to match the price, and we decided to go with the local dealer at the same price. And also for ease, because you get some complimentary oil changes and maintenance work done, so.
May I ask you a question?
Go right ahead.
That local dealer is many miles away, and that local dealer is on Colonial Boulevard, which is gonna be closed, starting, June 7th at that Evans Railroad track. You need to take that into consideration.
Detour.
Hmm?
Detour.
Mr. Banks, would you like to continue your motion?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of 2 vehicles with the price not exceeding the budgeted amount. What was the cost, Chris?
$42,806.26.
Do I have a second?
Didn't you say?
Did she make it? Did you
I
say?
can second that. I just was gonna second it for discussion.
No.
That's
Did-
why
Did you second it?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. So Mr. Banks made the motion, Mr. Tinkle seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Supervisor comments. I will start down with Mrs. Flaherty tonight.
I don't have any comments.
Mr. Guy?
I have none, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Banks?
In preparation for the board advance, I think there will be an agenda that'll go out. I think Joe, if he hasn't done already, is gonna send a list of priorities that have come out of his Yellow Brick Road research and the exercise that we did somewhere towards the end of last year. We all identified what we thought the priorities are. He's gonna ask us to go through and rank them. And I would just say, take a look at the agenda the pre-agenda when it comes out. I think the primary purpose is for us to go in, set some expectations, have some operational direction, and continue to create a plan moving forward, not only short term but also long term. We're also going to look at the organizational structure. So the reason I bring this up is just some things for you to be thinking about. So we've made significant changes in our organization over this past year with the transition of the district manager and ops in-house. We've got the senior leadership members in place, minus we need to backfill the business manager, which Chris is looking at that position, the job description, to determine if there's any modifications that are needed at this particular time. But we just need to be thinking about where we're at as an organization, the things that we need, the priorities that we need to execute on moving forward, and any items that you may have that you want to discuss during that time period. I would say you can trickle them through Chris, and then Chris will put them through to Joe. But I'm really excited about the board advance. I think we're going to come out of it with some very positive direction moving forward. Also, was there any updates on the high school? Did anybody make that? Did that come up while I was gone?
No.
Okay. So there was a town hall last night in Lehigh. They did a summary of all the different steps that have taken place, and basically the next step is for the recommendation to go to the board. I think that's June 6th, and then the board will vote on June 27th. For all intent and purposes, at this point, all of the prior votes have all gone in the way of Gateway. There was no indication at last night's meeting that would not be the recommendation. Matter of fact, there was a little bit of a leak that came out that said that the board superintendent was already prepared to make the recommendation to the school board of the Gateway site. So
There
just
was one vote that picked out.
Yeah.
the
There was
EDAC.
one,
Yeah.
yeah.
But for the most part, if
Yeah.
you look at the cumulative whole, I would be surprised if Gateway wasn't selected based on the need and everything that I've heard. So just to let this board prepare, probably more importantly, Chris, as they move forward, we want to continue to have somewhat of I don't know if a seat at the table is the right terminology, but at least a voice in that process. And the earlier we can stay engaged, the better positioning it will be for us. So that's all that I have.
Several of them. First, we didn't talk about Girl Scout. What's going on there?
Right now, mold inspection
They
is
are doing
taking
it?
place, and we're
Great.
looking at having a roofing contractor come in and look at those small leaks and determine what the extent of them is and what the cost is to repair, and kind of fine tuning any costs associated with the building to bring it up to.
Is there a chance to have a finalization of this at the next meeting? Think they'll have it ready?
I think it'll be pretty close.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's, you're basically just looking at, some damage and potential damage, how far it went, and, the cost to remediate it, so
Okay.
that we have a good idea there.
Good.
And I just have a rider on that. I had told April before she left, we have a facilities manager at Gartner that would be open to having conversations with the district. She manages all of our properties, like the 2 Gartner buildings and the 3rd training facility. So if we wanted to pick her brain as far as best way to utilize office spaces and to get some consulting there, she said she would be more than happy to have some conversation. So that could be of some value. So Chris, I'll direct her to
Sure.
you.
Okay, have her
At whatever
come take
point,
a
if we
walk
do
through and-
proceed,
Mhm.
it would just a nice resource to be able to tap into.
Next one I had is the youth director at the church, Gateway Trinity, identified a problem that we've got over with the fun park. There's no water, and the kids have been coming over to the church, and they set out bottles.
The Gateway Lutheran, or Trinity Lutheran you're talking about?
Yes, yeah, over behind, next to the Girl Scout. And they set out bottles of water, well, those are consumed quickly. And then, instead of doing without or going and getting their own, and nobody is there, they go turn on the faucet, at the church. And they have been leaving the faucet running. And the bill last month, I think, was over $100 when they shut off the hose. Well, the hose. So when they took off the hose bib before, so you can't screw it, somebody tried to jimmy it and knocked it off the wall, and then it really leaked. So the issue is, she asked if I would bring, and I think it certainly goes along with everything else we're doing with parks, would like to ask maybe Mike to investigate putting in a water cooler at the fun park.
Like a water fountain?
Water, well, you can't do a fountain, you'd have to do it as a cooler. I don't know how you do a fountain. Here, that water would come out of there, nobody would drink it. So it's gonna have to go through a cooler. You don't want to drink water
Like
that's.
standalone, like you have to golf.
Yeah, like we have at the tennis courts and stuff like that. It's not that difficult to do. We did them at the tennis courts, but we have a source of water and we have electrical, so
You got ice.
it's not that hard to do. But she asked that that be done. I'd like to have Mike present to us at the next meeting what that would cost to make that happen.
Okay.
The next one is that at the last meeting, I made a presentation on the golf course lake bank, and it just so happened the next day in the newspaper, and that went down in flames. The next day in the newspaper, showcase, I don't know where Hampton Lakes is at, but here's a picture of what I vision that we want our littorals, I'll pass this on down the road to all the board members to see. This was in news press. I think this is something that we need to be really looking at, and to follow up on that, Mike and I spent, what was it, Wednesday, Tuesday? Time flies when you're having fun, 3 or 4 hours, driving around looking at ponds in both Lee County and we even ventured, I think, into Collier County, looking at ponds. And we're talking with other contractors, other vendors, and engineers of what can we do to do these things. We've talked about lowering the cost. Well, we had a very interesting discussion with this one that's doing the work, and they're pretty much telling us that $120 to $140 is just going to be about the limit. Now, granted, we had a price to do the golf course for $79 from one of the vendors. I don't know if we're comparing apples and oranges on what these guys are doing. I do know they're doing a lot more work at that expense, and it's all littoral driven.
And that's important,
And
Ed. I mean, I think the question, that, and I'll plead ignorance myself, when we define littorals, I envision what I've seen for the past 14 years.
Here?
Which is not
Which is
aesthetically
not,
pleasing.
no.
So I think that's where, when you talk about littorals, I think most people go, ugh.
Well,
But if we define it differently, and we get, in that image, I'm like, that's not at all what I envision littorals to look like.
Well, we went to Parker Lake, and Parker Lake is one that was done by one of the firms where they brought in the stone, similar to what we do, not the heavy Armamax matting, but a material called Curlex. Cheaper product, a little bit better than Cocoa Mat, but they wrap it into a trench, take it down, and then they immediately, as quick as they can, get in and plant the littorals on it to protect it. Well, Parker Lake, they've got it string lining along the lake with the littorals. You've got anywhere from 2 to 4 feet from the shoreline of nice, pretty water. Then you hit a 4 to 6 foot wide littoral zone, and I mean, it looks like it's manicured. Beautiful flowering deal. We could do something like that. I think we could sell it, and I know we can sell it to where we have to put in littorals anyway. But what this all led to is that, talked to Mike, we talked to Chris, sometime in the next couple of weeks, we need to sit down and try to reevaluate, talk to Tyler today about it, reevaluate where we're going with this whole thing, because we're sitting here with Part B of Phase 1, 8 ponds to go with 18,000 feet. 18,000 feet. Under any set of circumstances, if we're over 100, up to 140, $6 million is not going to be enough. So if we took 150, because I can multiply that pretty good, that's 2.7 million. We only have 1.6 million left out of the 6 million. So we got to come up with a plan of how we can cut this cost down. That's just Phase 1. We got 34,000 feet coming up in Phase 2. We're going to quickly get to that $20 million figure if we don't start coming up with ways that are less expensive than what we had to do on the first 5 ponds, which were difficult projects. Tyler and I looked at one today, or 2 ponds today, that we can significantly cut back on the cost. The problem comes down, and it continues to come down. South Florida doesn't have an answer for it. Lee County doesn't have an answer for it. And none of the contractors we've talked to have an answer for it, and that is the question: if you don't put in littorals, what else can you do? The only answer that we're running into is it's hard surface. It's that simple. It's hard surface. Now, I found this to be interesting. In Collier County, they're using GeoWeb, like we tried on one of ours. What was that over there on 126, Dave Harley's area? They're only going with 3-inch GeoWeb. That's the ones, the little squares that you fill them up and then put the sod or whatever on it. They are getting that defined as long as you don't have the rock exposed to the top. In other words, they put a little bit of topsoil on the top. That's not defined as a hard surface. We did something similar, and Lee County called it a hard surface. So we got to have a discussion with Lee County and South Florida Water Management District on just how we proceed. But I think there's opportunities, and I guess what I'm saying is we need to come back to this group sometime in the next 30 days with proposals of how to proceed, not only on the next 8, but the next 34, 17, 17, 34, 42 total, and get this thing planned out. I know at the meeting on the 8th, the public hearing, we are going to get hit big time by this. We've had residents, I've had phone calls. We've had a resident that indicated that maybe what we should do is slow down. Others are saying, you haven't done mine. Why am I paying? I don't think we can slow down. But I think what we need to do is to maybe be cautious of how we proceed to make sure that that $20 million, if it has to go to 20, it goes to 20. But if we can make it go to 14 or 12 or 10, then we need to be examining that deal. And especially, we got to get staff, and maybe this for Mike, you, we have got to have, now that we have the listing of the ponds in phase 1, the rest of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, we need to definitively know where we have development orders that definitively say we have to put in littorals so that we can start figuring that into the equation. Then the other one is that when we have areas that are not residential, good examples coming up is Pond 86. This board previously made the statement, we're not doing anything but residential. Well, here's the problem you run into. You've got an area up there that just happens to be on Griffin Drive to where 2 drain swales come in and we're doing nothing. And that's what it, Chris, 100, 120, 150 feet, something like that, maybe 200 feet.
225 total. Well, the Griffin side.
We need to be
and there's also
doing
the
where
wetland.
it's common sense. We need to be doing all of these. To do a pond like that and spending the money we're talking about doing it, making it look half, you know what, that's ridiculous. Now, when you have wetlands, when you have other areas, then maybe that's up for discussion. But where we have a common area that is being omitted because, and Tyler will tell you, he omitted it because the board told him to omit it. I think we need to take a second look at that and giving a little bit more leeway to the district manager to make some decisions that, come on, let's use our common sense. Use our common sense. But sometime in the next couple of weeks, we're going to try to get together based upon what Mike is collecting, what we've seen on these site visits, sit down with Tyler and rehash where we are on the next 8 and where we are on the next 34, and then try to get back with what we have as in the way of a recommendation.
And I would just add that I don't think anyone's going to disagree with you that cutting costs is something that's desirable. I think we all have heartburn over the fact that this cost continues to rise. The one thing I would say is maybe slowing down is not the right term, but reprioritizing and reassessing where we're at, because if we can come up with alternative solutions, and I think that picture is beautiful, and I would love to have that type of lake around where I live. But we need to figure out what our pond standard is and define that.
Well, we've got that. We already approved it.
What I mean is maybe even from a design perspective, I don't know how deep it really goes, because once we get past phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, continue going, these lakes need to be addressed in somewhat of the same, maybe not the same manner as far as severity and how we treat them, but we can't get into phase 3 and we're doing a different design than we did in phase 2, if it maybe aesthetically looks different or whatever, because we're going to run into problems there where you did this lake different than mine, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. So we need to create a consistent standard, just like we would have, you know, a landscaping standard throughout the community, where we have a, just a set standard. So that's my only
Well,
comment.
if we don't come up with a plan that looks at other options, and it may be that Lake X will be one thing and Lake Y will be something else. If we don't, we're looking at 232 for 80,000 feet. And I'll tell you, you'll blow 20 million, you'll go right past 20
And
million.
it could-
So we've got to come up with something, and to me, it's severity of the erosion.
No, and I agree
If
with
the
that.
severity of the erosion calls for what it did on those first 5 ponds,
Then it is what it is.
it is what it is. Yep.
And I agree with you that that looks beautiful. That looks like, you know, something you'd want to see on, like on a golf course.
That's what we wanna see.
But you also have to take into consideration that to maintain that look
Yeah. Oh, I
is
understand.
not going to be
And
cheap.
and we're going to have Hampton Park coming in one of these days, knock on wood, when it's done and done right. You're gonna come in with the largest number of lakes and littorals that we've ever seen. 28,742 littorals coming on their 14 ponds.
And in Stony
So
Brook-
we are going to be changing, and when you talk to the county about this, I guarantee you don't get a crying towel out, because they don't care. You will operate it and maintain it,
And we
and
had
that's gonna change our budgets.
a lot more littorals in Stony Brook at one time, when we had them on some of the lakes almost all the way around, because they had started spreading. We had one year when we had 22 inches of rain in 3 weeks. It killed all the littorals. They've
Well,
never
did you see
come
the
back.
pictures floating around? I think I got them. I don't know if the rest of you got them, but somebody over in Flavia's neighborhood sent out a before and after. And I mean, it's graphic. Magnolia Lake had littorals everywhere. Now they're gone. And it's our job to not allow that to happen. Especially where they're required by DO. That's everything I had.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Mrs. Flaherty?
Just go off of what Mr. Tinkle said.
Sure.
Okay, one of the things is when he was talking about the lake restoration was, we need to put somehow cross too, that even though you don't live with a pond in your backyard, that it's still really part of, you put.
Stormwater management.
Yep.
That's
So
gonna
that
come up
means-
at that meeting.
Yeah.
Yep, it is.
And we've addressed it several times in these meetings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
the
it needs to
importance
be
of 'em.
for that one. And the other thing is the Girl Scout building, Mr. Wainwright,
Yes, ma'am.
permit
What kind of permit are we talking about?
for the Girl Scout building.
Zoning.
Zoning, rezoning.
Zoning change? I think we were going to move forward with the zoning change if the contract proceeded, which it didn't, and then now it is. So if Gateway's ready for us to make that application, I
Only
think we
because
can do
there are
that.
a couple people at Pinecrest that are not thrilled, that have contacted me.
Understandable. I mean, ultimately, the HOA will either sign off on or they won't, so.
I was just curious if you had contacted any of those people yet, so.
No, ma'am, we haven't, and, I mean, as soon as Gateway's ready for us to move forward with the zoning application, we can do that, but I think, anyway, we were holding off until the contract issues got sorted out.
And I think what the board approved was, or to stay within what was required, which is HOA approval, not
Yeah,
individual
not individual.
residents.
Right.
Right.
That's correct.
Move adjourned.
So moved.
New track record.
We are adjourned.
Fantastic.
Great.
So I wanted to show you this.
Who's got that picture of the newspaper?
Right here.
That Mr.
Mr. Schoolmaker.
You know, this is just
Mr. Shoemaker.
something I did a while back. This is the.
Good, I just like the next.
This was
when you
based
do
on the
it, put
original
together
design
the
that I just
I
modified.
just like to see.
It's not, it's not the scale.
You guys negotiated the mold thing
Because
today, right?
everybody's
Conversation
house
we were
will
having
flood.
yesterday.
Is that it?
Yeah.
They're required
Yeah,
by,
so,
they're
you know,
required
is that
by
it for
South
the-
Florida
I mean, other than
Water.
that, are we done with the contract? Will they accept everything else?
It's because you don't want to draft it.
These are not
There's a section in there
recreational
that's
lakes.
called outdoor, you know, bocce, shuffleboard, and I would just add racquetball, two racquetball courts, you know, maybe slide this over a little bit, because that's become pretty popular as well.
I understand, and I
Just
have
based on this,
I dealt with those objections.
You know, we can take this to the consultants.
And I agree with you, I already
Yes, sir.
anticipated those objections
That
was
look like
part
that.
of
Okay.
I just want to reiterate again.
Okay, thank you.
Or do you?
They'll tell you as part of their development order how many spaces you have to have.
My money due.
I know that.
Parking will be a
Yeah.
component.
Okay, I mean, as far as zoning goes, I mean, we don't wanna do anything until you know that you're good on all the rest of it, right?
Thanks, Jim.
Yes.
I mean, we don't wanna rezone it for them if we don't end up buying it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could.
So, I guess whenever you're ready, man, let me know.
Phase one.
But,
Come in
until
and
then, I'll be
see what you're-
holding
I
for
just
y'all.
don't know if it's more cost effective. You do a parking lot first, and then you go around it, or do you, you know.
I don't know.
I didn't know.
What's this red line?
So this.
That's an administrative
Yes, this is
amendment
phase
to the
Hampton
PUD.
Park Drive.
So
basically, this is-
PUD,
so
it's
phase
not
one-
it's not actually a zoning change, I guess. It's just it's an amendment to the PUD. Is what we're doing.
Two would be this section here. Phase three would be enhancement.
Right, to approve the use. The problem was, when they made the original zoning maps, that area was like, wasn't defined by the zoning resolution. The Girl Scouts basically were kind of there without, you know, ever actually being formally approved. So when we approached the zoning department and said, hey, look, this is what we're looking to do, they said, well, we never really approved it for much of anything, so whatever you do, you gotta go through the
You know, whatever, but, so, but even doing something like this.
Dirk Dan. Dirk Dan, and then Audrey is the one who ultimately, so Dirk was the planner that was
And
on
that's my deal, you gotta get a consultant. I don't care how we do it, get a consultant, and all of them at one time, and have them come back and they get
A full master
Yeah.
recreation.
Yeah, we need to get that. And that was one thing I was gonna bring up at the retreat, is have that discussion. Okay, let's get this moving.
I do agree with
Oh, come on, it's always like that.
But not to the point where everyone's in that business, but it also.
Here's a happy medium.
The recreational side,
Did you,
that should be.
by the way, just as it was a word
And it's
document.
recreation, but
Was
we
it
also
locked?
have
We
a
need,
method that people pay.
we need that information.
People pay
You
for
meant
that.
the look of
That,
that.
you know, anything that's not.
Figure how to do that.
It's easy, left button,
Maybe she-
protect, password protect. I just noticed that. I was like, oh, I wonder what.
They're hot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're hot.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, let's come back to the rocks.
Yeah, I'm back.
Hey, are you playing on Sunday still? Has it gotten too hot? You playing in the morning?
No, that'll play on Sunday. Church on Sunday.
I mean, Saturday morning? You got your group?
Oh, yeah, we have our group. It's
a den of thieves.
So,
I'm gonna give them all $10.99 for this year. I've
I'm
given them
talking
so much
about
money.
birds.
I have nothing except for, you know, when he was talking about those elevations, that's the same thing on 86 and 87. Oh, you know, we use pond 5, 24 feet, since section 4, 23 feet, so they're off a foot on their
Pond
86 and 87.
Well, 86 and 80, there is no control between 86 and 87.
Right.
86 free flows to 87. 87 has a weir, and 87 set at 24.
You know what I'm saying?
Or I'm sorry, 20.
Is they said their control
24,
elevation
23,
based on the pond system 5 at 24 feet, where it's actually pond system 4
No,
at
it goes in,
23
no, it
feet.
goes in at 22.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pond is 22 at 4, 24 at 5.
That's the mother.
Yeah, that's right.
Love it.
The
It's
only
really looking
thing
at that.
east of
Sorry,
that
don't
hill
expect it
that
from
goes
me.
into 5 is Pine Crest and those, this pond
I
right out
just-
here.
I can't
They go
help
that
it.
way.
Sorry.
That map I've got at home that I'll bring to the meeting shows where all the ponds are and how the water connects to each pond.
Except my.
And yours, nothing comes into yours.
Coconut Point, right before I left to Brazil last month, Coconut Point, they're redoing their ponds, their tutorials specifically.
Where's this?
I was wondering, I just had to run into the Apple store.
Oh,
and then
that's
I
where the
noticed
Look
that
at
tree
they're
this,
doing
look
it.
at this. This is what we took pictures of when we were out.
I just went into Hammond Park.
I told the guys guys, I went back there and go.
There's what,
Like this road.
that's Parker
I said,
Lakes.
hey, what was
I
that
mean,
behind that
it
tree?
is manicured beautiful,
And went
all the
right
way
through
around,
the
every
road.
pond, it's just like that. These are
Those
those,
are the
these are those
purple ones.
purple,
Those purple, that's
Yeah,
what we used to have.
it's not that, what
and
what is
they
that
are
stuff we
beautiful,
had?
there's a name for it. We
They're
have
like a
thalia,
lily
was-
fine.
there's the gold, the yellow is the,
Funny, the guy said, he goes, you usually come through and the trees are low and I kind
Keno.
of hugged the middle.
Yeah.
He goes,
And
"There's
the,
traffic," so I
purple
went to
is,
one side. Obviously, you picked the wrong side.
But this is better, it doesn't grow so
I just-
high.
and then you get the,
Truck,
you
let's
get
move up
the
there by
spike
7-Eleven,
brush
get off the road.
on the back side of this that you cannot see, filters and everything. I mean, this is just
The question is,
beautiful.
what's the,
See, this is where the erosion problem was.
yeah, but what I mean is like,
They
if you look at
rebuilt all
other, if
that.
you look at other lakes,
Oh, here, let me show
the
you.
amount of water rise and drop
Oh, most of the
annually,
ones we've gone to have been 4 feet.
is it comparable to?
The root
Yes.
system of that, it's much different than the pallet. They're much finer and almost like you can lift it.
See, they go in there and they put this like lime rock, pack the daylights out of it. Then they bring in the 4-inch topsoil, bring it to slope, and then they put down this matting. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. That's matting, that's the Curlex. And here's,
Had the curly right at the top of.
and there's what it looks like before they put the littorals in. I mean, it looks like a pool, it's beautiful. But they don't, this stuff only got like maybe a 90-day
And are
life.
they're not, what are they doing with this rock?
That rock, you can't see it, it's around, it's a rip wrap around.